So video games and fashion have always had a bit of a strange relationship, right? For one, game devs are often the more nerdier types of people, at least stereotypically, and so what they tend to value in regards to clothing will oft shine through in games with people coming out looking straight Matrix, way over the top fanficky, or well, let's just say functional. But, on the other hand, the necessity for artists to directly design characters entirely from scratch will result in a very deliberate look. Even something as seemingly basic as Joe Normie Nathan Drake will still have a lot of thought put into how he looks, and that how his dress will reflect his colonialist pillaging rock climbing adventures. Not really the type of shit I'd like to be focusing on here though. I want to touch up with some of the more crazier, outrageous, gaudy, or perchance even controversial video game threads. Particularly from the titles by developer Square, who, while often getting dunked on for it, have very openly flirted with their love of and involvement in the fashion industry. So, I guess it's time for
the Video Game Fashion Show.
If you watch this channel with any regularity, you'd know that I loves me some Final Fantasy, chiefly because of the style these games tend to have. From the futuristic, hyper-stylized architecture of Lightning Returns or Final Fantasy VIII and the weirdly sportwear-influenced biking helmet-wearing garbage of the Xanarkandians, Xanarkunts, to the hyper-androgynous pretty boys that are Bartz and Ramza. Funnily enough though, it is exactly this aspect of the series that has come under fire a lot. In part, this is due to JRPG characters often being a bit silly looking. Like, there's an audaciousness to it that I both like and respect, but you will definitely get stabbed if you go out looking like this. And some folks also feel the same way about Sion or Zell or Titus. But another, more or less fun to confront aspect of the hatred towards Final Fantasy design stems partially from an ignorance towards what high fashion be in the first place, like, I mean, this could be a Kingdom Hearts character, but also from a bit of ignorance on some other levels, like some bigotry even maybe. Unintentionally so, perhaps. I first started to think about this back when Mobius Final Fantasy was announced, hitting us with this character reveal. My first thought was, oh, a little basic maybe, but I guess I fucks with it. Looks cool. Only to then see the rest of the internet erupt in,
oh my god, look at how they're feminizing men.
This is fucking ridiculous. He's barely wearing anything. My dude, that's fucking gay.
And so on. It gave off a bit of a weird vibe. A very macho vibe. People who'd be cool with female characters looking this out there and naked thinking it's suddenly the worst thing ever when boy. Now, I do realize that saying people is always stupid because those getting mad at the one thing might not be the ones vibing with the other, but as a whole it still stained the zeitgeist in a deeply duded manner that slowly opened the doors to more mockery of Final Fantasy characters, their designs, and even personalities. Like, bro, look at these gay shorts. And look at this nuge too. People really be out here saying that this is one of the worst character designs ever. And I mean, he's got the red onesie with the zipper down the crotch. He's got the iron leg support, the walking stick, the fur, the purple moon boots matching nicely with the onesie color-wise, the fucking claw hand, numerous pointless belts for extra sass, and a face with glasses that say daddy, and of course, the Thunder Dread. And I will admit, homie's a little bit extra for real. But I don't know, it looks kind of good though. I mean, yeah, the claw hand and the iron leg thing are quite out there, but if you look at everyone else in this universe, it's clearly just a spirit thing, and otherwise, I feel like that color-wise, shit's put together super well. Personally, the fact that he has a disability sets him apart. It's not really something you see represented in games a whole lot, and it works well with his design given that the claw hand is now also his pimp cane hand. The round glasses are also a cool look that you see sported a lot nowadays, and while the giant dread is a bit over the top, I also find it to be a neat subversion of the anime antenna. A drantenna? Yeah. It's unique, it has flair, it says a lot about him as a person, given that casual but gentleman but crip, and is perfectly in line with the trends of the universe that he belongs in, which really isn't that all fashion makes you do anyway. With this design though, I could be a massive bitch about it and say,
what bro? You fucking Hating on people with disabilities there, bro? Fucking hating on dreads, bro? Bro, is you racist?
But realistically, it's probably, hopefully, mostly got nothing to do with that and is instead hated on because he exemplifies a lot of the often mocked traits of character designer Tetsuya Nomura. If you don't know, he's the guy who writes and directs the insanity that is Kingdom Hearts and is also the main artist for the Final Fantasy series as of its 7th entry. With, I think, only 12 and the Moes not having him on as a lead and or OG concept designer. Stylistically though, he is both loved for his interesting influences taken from urban streetwear, with a lot coming from both emo and hip-hop trends of the late 90s and early 2000s, resulting in edgy darkness and cheeky bagginess, and hated for his overuse of belt buckles, zippers, dangle-dangles, stupid hair, and quote-unquote weird shit like said claw hand and disabilities. Dude can go from designing a sexy scientist lady who wears her coat like a cape whilst wearing little to nothing else, who also has one eye and a prosthetic arm, to drawing this wholesome little chubby dude with the baggy pants and the Dog Street gang and the smile so nonchalant he might be about to drop the fattest fucking mixtape of the summer.
Strike a pose, T!
Nomura has a unique style for sure, and I can certainly see why he'd be polarizing just on a pure taste level. I think he's great because I value shit that looks new or different due to it tickling my creative bits, but one less so inclined might just be left wondering why his Batman design needed so many extra hands. Nuge, by the way, is actually one of the most hated Final Fantasy designs out there. I've done some research into that for this video, of course, and he's right up there with this kid from Tactics A2, which I've never played, Timbus from Tenbus, Vaughn with his nipple warmers, and Vanille. And I want to talk about this because I got bones, bro, and I'ma pick 'em. First up is the child, with the main complaints being his pizza book thing. The fact that he's carrying about 10 gypsies worth of charms on his person, I can say this, my dad is Roma, it's not racist, his weird little cone pants, and this massive sword thing. Now, Nomura didn't draw this, as it's done by Ryoma Ito of spin-offs and mobile games fame, and I can defo see why it's up there on Rex level with just how extra it is. Though I do fuck with the sword. I don't know what the hell it is or what it does, but it's getting me to want to try out the game to see what its deal is. It's okay. It's basically just Tactics Advanced but with less personality, and all three of these things seem to me like good things to do, so how fucking dare you make me give one up, game? Homie got my back though. Anyway, it's definitely a goofy design, but it looks cute and whimsical, and it's also pretty funny how, given how many items you tend to carry on you in RPGs, this design actually reflects that. I'm not insecure enough to hate on something this adorable, I'm sorry. Then there's Timbus. As a character, he's hated for being kind of a blubber baby, but in that he's also loved for being genuinely emotional in an honest, uncool, or unpretty sort of way. And he's dressed in the wear of a sportsman. Yeah, that's right, this crazy arm thingy is actually used to throw ball good and to bump into dudes underwater, and given that his entire city got leveled mid-game, I think it's fair to cut him some slack on that one. It's not like the dude could go for a quick change or nothing. Otherwise though, yeah, the pant leg thing, I'm not too much of a fan either. Like, honestly, I could see that becoming a trend, but then I'd imagine it'd be more so with a denim-like fabric rather than this soft leathery looking shit, which I think is what makes it not work. Especially with how it transitions into these goofy overalls, which are then topped off by the nipple height jacket. Dude also has the most late 90s ass hair ever, which doesn't round it off well at all. Although, I will say one thing, and that's that it looks better in the original artwork. The fabric looks less shiny, and the jacket looks better with a more pronounced pattern on it. Nor is his hair as frosty or bleachy, but overall, it's definitely not Nomura's best work per se, even if it does fit in with the narrative. Fucking Vaughn though. They were like, yo, let's do Aladdin, but androgynous as fuck, and so they did. They made Aladdin, but androgynous as fuck. Not really a lot to say here, honestly. His nipple vest and face made man dudes feel uncomfortable, but I don't really give a shit. And he's got like this cool turquoisey thing on his pants, and this red and yellow cloth wrapped around his waist that fits with the Persian as fuck vibe the game has as a whole. And yeah, he's kind of a mid character in the background a lot, and a poor street rat, and I think that this design represents that perfectly. But then there's Vanille, a character who isn't so much hated for her looks as she is for her, well, character. And I'm gonna be real, I think she can definitely be a tad obnoxious too. But I think it has like a point or some shit. I don't know. I dig her look though. She's like from space dinosaur tribal Australia, and so her fashion draws a lot from cultural ideas you wouldn't normally see in a game this future. It's also not overdone at all. Like sure, she's got beads and bracelets up the ass, but the coloring and where the drip droop makes them blend in with the overall fit seamlessly. The pelty thing, I guess, is kind of weird with its little dingle bags, which is really the only thing that makes it look JRPG-y, really, as overall, it's something you could actually see someone wear in real life at certain music festivals or beaches or whatever, and that's more than I can say for any of the other fits we've seen so far, so shit's pretty good. Don't know where these Stone Age level motherfuckers would have gotten these Ugg boots from though, but what do I know? As you may have noticed just now with me going over various hated designs there, is that they are certainly quite varied. That's because Square kinda has these eras in regards to their fashion. There's the late 80s and early 90s where most of their designs came from Yoshitaka Amano, who drew inspiration from traditional fantasy designs like knights and princesses and shit, but fused it with the at the time current trend of new romantics and new wave. And so things got hella androgynous, big hair-y and earring-y fast. Then there's the mid to late 90s where, with a few exceptions like Vagrant Story and FF9, we entered the Nomura zone, who mostly drew from more urban wear one would see people sport in major cities. Anything from more regular looking clothing and fancier, jazzier, big night out occasion shit, to super flashy and baggy hip-hop inspired apparel and slightly punkier looking stuff. It wouldn't be until the early 2000s when things started getting a bit bonkers, with the urban and punk shit being taken to further and further extremes and them also trying a hand at designing styles all their own, as to suit better with the crazier games that they were doing. Think of Sora's big shoes and pant being derived from Sion's thug anime boy fashion but taken in a fittingly Disney-y direction. Or anything about the Final Fantasy X games being wholly in its own zone with the Islander vibes of Spira and the future sportwear vibes of Xanarkand. After this, the company kind of floundered for a bit, doing all kinds of different stuff, making it hard to find a clear trend outside of there being a full-on Nomura takeover, letting him go bonkers by designing many a huge colorful cast. The Organization 13, the twewy Kids, and BFC come to mind. And finally, there's the final modern era, in which shit toned down a fair bit, generally going for a more realistic aesthetic mixed with the poshest of current high fashion trends, resulting in the super sleek H&M-esque designs of the Third Birthday, the muted looks of characters like Hope and Snow, as well as later the Final Fantasy 15 boys and their normie-ass NPCs, and Louis V. Them Hearts. They even got character designer Roberto Ferrari to bring in that trademark Italian sleekness, as well as Nomura leaving his belt zippy pensions at the door for the most part. The former, though, while being a great-ass designer and artist for sure, does highlight something quite interesting about both fashion and JRPG protagonists, being that clothing is class. This is highlighted in Final Fantasy 15 perfectly, given that our boys look like the largest, flashiest douchebags in comparison to the super regular looking NPCs. You see this in every JRPG to an extent for sure. The main gang will always be more designed than everyone else, but when you drag modern high fashion into it, as well as them also literally all being aristocrats, it begins to stand out in a bit of a different way. Like, you can just see these motherfuckers doing one of those fit tally videos where they rank up their prices. Additionally, what I also find worth noting is that toned down Nomura deserves more credit. Yes, sometimes he goes full Titus, but it's the lead into the modern post-mid-2000s era where most of my favorite Square designs happen to come from. Primarily, the character art he did for a fucking mobile game of all things called Before Crisis. Why? Well, when all of your characters wear black suits, you'd really need to focus on the minor details of how they wear it, pose with it, maybe customize it slightly and what they hairdo do to make them stand out. And I mean, bruh, look at this chick. She's called Knives, which is a badass fucking name on its own, but goddamn man, this is a fucking look. Slick-backed hair with the edgy emo dangles, no tie because fuck you, and a pose that says, "Move the fuck out of my way, bitch." Shit's great, and it shows off how much character Nomura still manages to express without going full overboard with the fashion pulls. Plus, this key art with the yellow background, just beautiful. Now, with these clearly defined eras, something I always find pretty fun to do is to look back at some and figure out how some things may have left an influence indirectly or otherwise. I mean, as I've shown, Square's designers have the tendency to borrow from current trends and morph them into something more JRPG-y, thus in turn creating more of its own thing. I mean, take the tugged out hard but soft anime cute boy vibings of young homie Sion from The Bouncer, for instance. Shit definitely bears a fair bit of similarities to what's going on in modern day fashion, whether if it's the printed text in weird places on clothing, the audacious colors, the baggy yet fitness of it all, and of course the huge but not ineffeminate jewelry. This wouldn't look weird on someone like Lil Uzi Vert or Billie Eilish now, does it? Doesn't mean that these two people are like huge The Bouncer fans. Quite frankly, I find this very unlikely, but it still shows how these designs interpreted trends from their time in a different way that makes them seem far more current. Same thing with Racing Lagoon.
The Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit.
Which is a really cool looking game that goes both full Y2K and full on SoundCloud rapper whilst coding shit with the generally fashionable vibes of Japanese streetcar racing. Basically, what I'm getting at is that Square has been repping fashion for quite some time now. Like, literally since the NES and SNES days, even though it might not have always really seemed that way in-game. Or at least, there was the job system in both 3 and V and later in Tactics and 10-2 and Lightning Returns, which is literally a system centered around playing dress-up, as each dress bears different stats, but I think something that overall gave way to some of the disillusioned dudes getting all pissy-pampered over Mobius is the fact that if they weren't looking at the packaging or artworks much, neither of which were commonly owned at the time, then they couldn't have known that this wee blue shirt baby boy was supposed to look like this. So then, when he came out reppin' in the Cydia, it caused a fair bit of a stir as if they were ruining him or some shit. But truthfully, Square had always been out there showing off their collective love for fashion and fabulous androgyny. It's just that not many used to know this. Though the fashion industry itself eventually did. Similarly to how Araki, after years of sucking major fashion dangus with his JoJo boys, suddenly got himself a Gucci collab, Square too landed a gig with Louis Vuitton, starring Lightning, who just did star in her own dress-up based fashion game, and by just I mean like 3 years prior, so as to why this and why now, no one will ever know. Or, well, it's probably just an ad campaign, really. Maybe an effort to strengthen the connection and to get fans of these games into high fashion, actually, because gaming wouldn't have been enough of an expensive hobby of its own. And hey, you know, nothing quite like a soulless digital woman to show how little of a fuck the fashion industry tends to give about the humanity of its walking clothes hangers. While this one became quite infamous, though, it is far from the first and only time that this happened. Earlier that very same decade, Final Fantasy XIII 2 characters appeared in Prada ads, which look pretty fucking bizarre given the near photorealistic uncanniness of it, though Seth seems to be having a pretty fun time. And they also look better than they did in the actual games, if I'm honest. The douchebag 15 boys also rocked fully buyable fits if you want to look like a massive asshole in every situation yourself, and later they also hooked up with Japanese brand super groupies to get these KH childs some fashionable threads. And there's also this really weird thing where people keep comparing various Kanye fits to Final Fantasy characters, which really is probably the most fittingly ill-fitting yet fitting way to close this video off. Often misunderstood or mocked by people who don't know, yet hugely influential, celebrated, and unique, Square's designers and their characters are certainly a strange bunch, though personally I find them hard not to appreciate. Nomura specifically is such a madman, man, going anywhere from super proper but anime pretty to fully thugged out as fuck and turbo emo, almost perfectly culminating in The World Ends With You, a game he's also produced set in the Shibuya district, which is literally the fashion center of Japan with all that may entail. Also worth pointing out is that they've hooked up with Akira Toriyama multiple times, and while he's often lauded for his interesting looking villains and spiky hairs, he certainly also shouldn't be underestimated as a designer of clothing because, bro, he made the Batman shirts. And also like all of Bulma's bullshit and some great ass key art and fun casual wear for the cast, and his Tobo characters are certainly interesting, though more on him and them in soonish to be released later videos, what I'm already writing. And yeah, there isn't really much of an overall point to this video otherwise, just that I thought that these shits is worth appreciating for what they do and are and have done and been and will hopefully be for many years to come.